I think we need more empathy in the world. I think we need a lot more empathy in the world. You may well be someone who is empathic. If you are, I need to tell you something. There's a dark side to empathy. And what I mean by that is that, well, let's take a step back first. In the first instance, it's worth pointing out there are two types of empathy. One is cognitive empathy, the other is emotional empathy. So cognitive empathy, let's use an example. Someone's got to shut a business down after 20 years, 60 people lose their jobs. We can step into the owner's shoes cognitively and imagine all the constraints, challenges that they faced, the bills, the debt, the lack of profit, and so on. And then recognise that, yeah, there's a reason that they had to do that. I can see this from their perspective. We may have emotions, but not necessarily. Some people feel nothing, but that's another story for another time. Emotional empathy, well, yes, we can still consider the situation cognitively, but we can step into the shoes of the owner or owners, and of course the people who lose or have lost their jobs. The owner, the angst, the pain, 20 years of hard work and sacrifice evaporated overnight. The people who've lost their jobs, how the heck will they feed and clothe the children? How are they going to do that? If we find ourselves identifying and feeling those emotions too accurately, we can end up in the same emotional quagmire. In other words, we can't help someone if we get too empathic, overly empathic. When that happens, it used to be called like emotional exhaustion or empathy burnout, but these days it is more likely to be called emotion or emotional contagion. We've picked up the stuff from other people and we find ourselves feeling the same thing. And the way I think that it's best to consider it is that we've lost a sense of separateness. We're no longer like us looking at this individual who is having these challenges and feeling something. That's part of empathy. That's important. That's great. We actually are the same. It's like one person. And when we lose that sense of distance, we can become useless. We can't actually help them because those emotions can overpower us. I've talked about emotions before. Strong emotions can reduce our ability to problem solve. So we feel the empathy, we want to help, but if we get too close to it, if we get dragged down too far, particularly with negative emotions, we feel that pain so acutely, then we're not removed from it enough to be logical and help them. We can't even, in fact, help ourselves. And indeed, we may find that we have to move away from the situation entirely because it's too painful. It's like switching a TV off because you're overpowered by all the stuff that's going on. So what's the solution? Well, one solution is partly to be aware of that, but also to put in place compassion. Compassion is like a close cousin. It's in the same Venn diagram as empathy and sympathy. Compassion, well, it implies action. It implies that we're empathic enough to feel the need to do something, to help, but then we help. And the introduction of doing something, whether it's to coach someone, to mentor them, to lead them in a different way, to physically take care of them, that routine, that process, it's a goal or goals. It gives us a sense of purpose and meaning. It also allows some of that adrenaline to be dissipated, and that's so important. Also, people suggest that as far as compassion is concerned, we should practice what is sometimes called loving kindness meditation, or metta with two T's, a Buddhist meditation. And what we do, and this is a real quick overview, is we practice essentially sending love and kindness to other people, and in doing so we find ourselves with an increased sense of well-being. It's almost like the thing I've talked about before, the law of dominant emotions. So the stress, the pain, the psychological pain that we feel as we look at other people, well, it's countered to a degree by that sense of meaning and purpose that we get by doing something, and that sense of sending out love to other people. And a lot of studies have shown, or suggested at least, that in doing that, it reduces our stress levels, it reduces inflammation at a cellular level. And indeed, doing things with purpose and meaning that is part of compassion, so it's caring and then doing, that also can reduce stress. And if you coach, if you mentor, if you lead, if you're a carer, if you're a parent, if you empathize too fully and you don't take care of yourself, then, well, inflammatory markers like CRP, C-reactive protein, show us, tell us, imply that your inflammation levels are, it's not just too high, it's raised for too long. It becomes chronic, and that's not good for us. That can reduce our ability to overcome any ailment. Our immune system, in other words, can be compromised. And so, if we as the, not the antidote, but I guess the prop, the support mechanism to help us be empathic but not be overpowered, is compassion and sending love and kindness to others, you've got to do the same to yourself. You see, you've got to make sure, you've probably heard of self-care. Well, practice compassion with you. What do you need to do things that allow you to be loving and kind to yourself? It's so easy to keep on going and going and going, and you can't. Ultimately, that's a recipe for disaster. So to be selfless, you've got to be a bit selfish. You've got to do those things that help you if you possibly can. Whether it's exercise, outdoors or indoors, whether it's sitting down and watching that movie, if you can get out to the cinema, whether it's that chocolate, the dark stuff apparently, that's better for us, whatever it is, those treats, you're not being selfish. You've got to do it, otherwise you cannot take care of that individual. Otherwise that empathy, it's not wasted, but it's going to impact you negatively, and you will not be able to help, mentor, coach, lead, run an HR department, be a carer, as well as you probably could have done. And so, take care of yourself.